Hey everyone, it's Coach Nerf here again with another archetype breakdown, this time on the Swordies. That's right, there's a lot of sword fighters in this game, and we'll be taking a look today at what they have in common, as well as some major key differences and how to deal with them all as a whole. By the end of this workout, you'll be able to identify the characteristics and abilities of sword characters and demonstrate how to use and abuse them. Let's get right into it. Let's warm up for this one with a squad strike 5v5 against a CPU team of Chrom, Ike, Corrin, Cloud, and Shulk. Note the differences in range across characters, which moves have longer range for each, and which ones have projectiles and other non-sword elements. The term swordie goes beyond simply having a sword in the game. Rather, it is more like a playstyle. Like zoners, swordies have a small zone that they can control that is essentially a product of their threat distance and the range of their disjointed moves. These moves that extend beyond the part of a character that is able to be hit by an opponent are what make them able to control space more effectively than someone who attacks with their body such as Mario or Ken. Some might say that even characters without a sword can still be a swordie because they rely on disjoints that require adequately precise spacing to win. Ridley is one such character. Between his neutral air, his forward tilt, and his forward air, there are some good arguments for him to be included. This is just one example of how there are no hard and fast rules for what qualifies a character as one archetype or another. There's plenty of crossover, as we'll see. Swordies sometimes have projectiles, which can be used to make opponents jump over and in, setting themselves up perfectly to be caught in an anti-aerial response from the swordie. Let's take a look at Byleth, a good example for some of these setups. Byleth has some incredible range and loads of KO power, and has a projectile in neutral special, Fail Not. During the first part of the charge, the move can be cancelled by spot dodge, jump, or shield. Once it reaches the second level of charge where it glows gold, Byleth is locked in and cannot cancel it. Quickly charging Fail Not in neutral as a conditioning tool can bait an opponent to try to avoid the move by jumping in, only to have Byleth jump cancel and catch them by surprise. Play against a Byleth CPU or player and learn the range of their punish tools like side special and forward air until you successfully approach them charging neutral special without getting hit 10 times. Knowing the range of a swordie's abilities is only half the battle. You have to know the timings as well. Some characters that fit the archetype have very complex strategies and a castle full of options that can be mixed up so you never do the same thing twice. Then, there's Ike. With one of the simplest game plans in Smash, Ike, on paper, should not be as strong as he is in practice. No matter how well you know what Ike is going to be looking for, I'll give you a hint, it's neutral air. You still find yourself getting hit by it, and Ike has options to follow up very effectively at different levels of percents. Not to mention, he hits like a ton of bricks. His long range is a great asset for him, but he's not as fast as other swordies. His airspeed is above average, but his air acceleration is very poor, meaning he can't shift his momentum effectively. You have to commit with Ike to each option you make. Play a best of 5 set as Ike and do the following. 1. Connect neutral air to back air 5 times, forward air 5 times, and up air 5 times. 2. Use down tilt and up tilt as a combo starter 5 times each. And 3. Use forward tilt to take 3 stocks. Sometimes your greatest weapon against a sword is a burst option. One of the downsides to having long range is that swordies often have some longer cooldown on their moves, making whiffs more punishable and making hits on shield less safe. We can use this to our advantage against them. Wait until the opponent makes a mistake, misspaces a move, and either falls too short and misses, or connects with your shield too closely, allowing you to find an out-of-shield option. This is typically one way to beat a swordie, but for some, it's much easier said than done. One of the hardest swordies to find an opening on is Pyra and Mithra. Two very strong swordies in their own right unite to make life difficult for anyone without appropriate tools to handle such aggression. Mithra is essentially a rushdown character with a sword, making her combos very strong and giving her the ability to keep throwing out attacks even if they don't find their target. Pyra, on the other hand, has immense range and kill potential and is used as the closer when Mithra gets those high percent combos. This duo is the perfect example of the breadth of the swordie archetype. Against characters like Mithra who can attack freely and safely, you will need to keep some of your better defensive options close at hand. Instead of shielding some of the approaching hits, try spot dodging instead. You will be able to use the iframes to avoid the move, making it whiff, and will get a faster punish than if you had simply shielded it out. The timing is tighter and it is more risky, but it's just one way to give yourself an opportunity to turn the tables when there was not one before. Play against Pyra and Mithra and do the following. 1. Spot dodge Mithra's approach and get a punish 15 times. 2. Shield and punish Pyra's attacks 15 times. And 3. Win 3 games against Pyra and Mithra. Spacing is the most important aspect for any sortie, but for some, it is even more vital to their plan. We discussed how Roy is considered a rushdown character. This is due to him not having much power in the tip of his sword and is forced to play more like a brawler-style character who gets in as close as possible. On the other side of the spectrum is Marth, a character that relies on hitting the opponent with the sweet spot of his sword, which is at the very end. These tippers reward him heavily for successful spacing with a ton of advantages. Have a long extended play session, spending 8 games or more either playing as Marth or playing against him. If you are playing as Marth, hit the opponent with the tip of your sword a total of 50 times. Notice how much priority you have over your enemy if you hit the sweet spot of your attack and what you can do to follow up afterwards. If you're playing against Marth, try to position yourself where you are either just outside his range or close enough to be hit by the sour spot of his sword. Keep the number of times you are hit by tippers under 50, and count how many times you are hit by the sour spot instead. This will teach you to be aware of your spacing at all times with regard to the length of the sword. Other sorties don't benefit from hitting the tip of their sword as much as Marth, but they do rely on keeping an opponent at their max range regardless. The farther they are away, the more safe their moves will be. The crossover between the sortie archetype and other archetypes should be a little more clear to you now. Mii Swordfighter, Robin, and Hero breach both the sortie and the zoner camps, for example. Some sword characters, as I mentioned, do indeed have projectiles they can use, but they may not be as useful in all matchups as simply swinging a disjointed weapon at their foe. Whether you play a sortie or not, recognize which moves extend beyond a character's hurtbox and which ones threaten your space most often. If your character struggles against this archetype, perhaps consider getting a secondary or counterpick to deal with sorties. I look forward to seeing what counterplay you can come up with on your own time. As always, this has been Coach Nerf. We'll see you again soon.